Hi everyone, Coach Elisa here. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all things narcissistic. If you haven't done so yet, I'm going to ask you to please hit the little bell and subscribe. And if you like this video, please go ahead and give it the thumbs up for me. Thank you in advance. All right, today I want to talk to you just a little bit actually about myself. Is that narcissistic? I don't know. But I want you guys to know my story, a little bit more of my story. I know some of you know some of the story, but I want to get into really the history of my story. So I was born and raised in a little tiny town called Hayburn, Idaho. My parents were farmers and I grew up on a farm. I loved my home life. I had a really good upbringing. I'm not going to say that my parents had the most healthy of marriage. They were divorced after 35 years of marriage, and they obviously had their problems, but overall I had a good childhood. I married when I was rather young. I was 20 years old when I married. I was expecting my son when I was married, and my son and daughter's father and I were married I was 20 and he was 24, and we had my son when I was 21. And then my daughter subsequently came when I was 24. Now that marriage, I just want to make it really clear because my platform is all about narcissism and abusive relationships, but I just want to make it really clear that my children's father was not abusive to me. We had problems in our marriage. Obviously, we ended up divorced. I made some really poor choices during our marriage, as well as he did, and we ended up divorced and losing our family because of those decisions. But I want to make it clear that my abusive relationships started after I was divorced. So the first man that I dated after I divorced, I would come to realize had some narcissistic traits. So he was the guy that really didn't want me, but he didn't want anyone else to have me. So he would just give me enough breadcrumbs just to keep me hanging on. He would cheat frequently. He would accuse me of cheating on him frequently. He would forbid me from having social media platforms while he had them and I didn't know about it. He would shame me for things that I did in my marriage in order to control me. He would manufacture chaos to upset me so that he could go out and cheat and party and I would stay home and cry in my pillow. And it was just a really, really dramatic relationship. I lost a lot of weight after I lost weight after I had my kids, but I even lost more weight after I got divorced and when I was in this relationship. And I truly believe now that it was due to the high stress levels that I was under in this relationship. And this relationship continued for I think 5 or almost 6 years. It was on again, off again for a couple of years, and then it was supposed to be on, and it was on my part, but it was not on his. And so this would be my first really dramatic relationship. Now, after that relationship, I started dating another gentleman who was more the type who would give the silent treatment. If he didn't get his way, he would just disappear. He just wouldn't talk to me, he wouldn't respond. So he would give me the silent treatment. He was also extremely insecure. He had been cheated on previously, and so he thought that I was inevitably going to cheat. He would show up at my home unannounced, and he would act like it was a surprise, here I am to visit you, but I always felt that it was surprise, here I am to check up on you. And I truly believe that that's what was happening. He was showing up out of the blue in order to check on me. He would look into things. He would hide my keys. He would accuse me of strange things that weren't happening. And, he was the sort of man who would give me things with expectation. And so when he was upset and not getting his way, that's the first thing he would want to do is take away the gifts that he had given me, which I relinquished because I didn't care about the gifts. But that was the sort of narcissism that I saw really prevalent in my second relationship with a narcissist. Now, my third one came, I met a man in 2014. He came on very strong, he took me out, secured the relationship after a couple of dates, and then he disappeared. And he didn't just disappear for a week, he disappeared for about 3 or 4 months. And then one day I just heard from him and I was like, you know what happened? And he told me that he had pursued a different relationship with another woman who he had also been dating after he had secured a relationship with me. So you would think that I would have learned something by now, but apparently I had to go through this 3 times to really get my degree in narcissism and really solidify it. But I ended up giving him another chance anyway. So we began dating, and less than a year later, we married early in 2015. Now, looking back, yes, there were signs of abuse before we ever married. And I will admit, at that time, I had been divorced for, I believe, 8 years. So there's been some time since my divorce, and I'm really just wanting a good, solid relationship and a home life. And so I overlooked a lot of these warning signs, but once I was married to him, then the abuse really started. He became physically abusive. He was verbally abusive. He would call me horrible names. He would pick a fight and he would take my phone and my car keys so that I couldn't call anyone and I couldn't leave. He would trap me in the house. If I ever disagreed with him, he would go into a fit of rage. I remember one time his son saying that his mother and father were arguing, and he was upset that they were arguing, and I just told his son, hey, look, your parents are just arguing because they're both concerned about you. This had to do with a long car ride that he was going to take with some teenage boys, and my husband then was adamant that he not go, and his mother thought it was okay, so they were having this disagreement. And so I just wanted to reassure his son that, hey, your mom and dad both love you, and they're just disagreeing about this because they both love you and they have a difference of opinion. And once I expressed that to this man, I was in the bathtub, I was reading a book, he grabbed the book from my hands and he tore it in half, and he accused me of not being on his side. And so he was very rage-filled. The physical abuse was awful. I, to this day, have pictures of bruises, and it was terrible. After I left him after he assaulted me in a parking lot, and a bystander called that into the police. And I still didn't learn. I was foolish enough to not press charges against him, which I should have done. I did leave at that time, and then a few months later, we were divorced. The marriage lasted less than 10 months. So those are the different types and the different symptoms that I can now see was narcissistic traits, and that I didn't know about for all of those years. I mean, this took place over about a 9-year time period. And I really had no idea until I married my now husband, and his ex-wife began doing some extremely deceptive things. And I thought, this just isn't normal. And we ended up studying sociopathy, or antisocial personality disorder. And I believe she fit that profile very well. All the behaviors were consistent. And that is how I learned why my relationships had not been working, because I was choosing people with narcissistic characteristics. And there is just no way that people who have these characteristics can have good, healthy relationships. Their relationships will always be riddled with problems and drama. And so that is how I came to learn I had been in narcissistic, abusive relationships. I mean, I knew that they were abusive. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have a name. So that's a bit more of my story. I hope that maybe some of you can identify with some of those things. And if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm always here. Thank you for listening, you guys, and I will see you next time.